Okay, Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our series of Shirim on the inner world of calmness. And today, what we're going to continue with is entering into the world of Kayin and Hevel. What happens after we fall out of Gan Eden? What happens after the Lahach, the Cherev HaMisapeches is placed in front of us? What happens after the human being is now splintered between process and goal, where effort and result seem to be fundamentally separate from one another, where the self is forced out of itself in the opposite position of Menucha, because I feel that I need to build something in order to be who I am, rather than building out of a sense of knowing who I am. When a person has acceptance of self, when a person feels that their shoresh is connected to who they are, and that already within themselves the treasure exists, and that already within themselves there's infinite koyach to express ourselves spiritually, psychologically, beneficially to the world. If I know that I don't need to leave where I am at in order to become who I am, so then a person is in a state of menucha, and then they can move out of that place and extend themselves from a position of strength rather than a position of a frenzied attempt to gain some value in my life. When a person expresses themselves without feeling that the shorish is enough, which is the opposite of menucha, so then a person will always be running and running and running and trying to do, moving outside of themselves, operating in a place of b'zeyas hapecha toch halechem, separation between the process and the goal, the chel of the aretz, where the tam ha'etz ketam ha'pri is no longer apparent, and we fall prey into that need to express ourselves, the feeling of that expression, that effort, that yagia, that labor that we're putting in, it feels alienated from us. It feels like it's a movement out of ourselves, disconnection from our source, no longer resting in a place of menucha. But we said that the ikar is to recognize that every ounce of the expression of self, every laborious effort to extend myself, to take the energy from within myself and to place it outside of myself so that it can continue to grow, can be rooted in a place of enoughness, that it can be rooted in a place of shabas. It can be rooted in a place of knowing that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one who's putting in the effort, that I can put in the effort so that I can become more than I am. And in that place, we're able to draw a little bit of comfort into the world, a little bit of comfort and menucha into the curse of B'zeas HaPecha Toch Alechem, the labor which is the very function of the human being. What we're going to discuss today is the ability to cultivate calmness from a world that is already saturated with that perspective. What happens when we've separated between the source and the expression? What happens when we've separated between the process and the goal? Where we've convinced ourselves that the world is a split thing and that menucha is a unified thing and therefore it's inaccessible in the world. That my job now as a human being who's kicked out of Gan Eden, who's cast out of Gan Eden, separated from Gan Eden, is now to enter into a process of labor that is devoid of calmness. How do we cultivate a calmness in a world that is by the very definition of itself the opposite of calmness? We're no longer in Gan Eden. We're no longer in Gan Eden in the moment that we're out of Gan Eden. As Rav Tzadok describes, the fundamental nature of the world is that it's the opposite of Menucha, which is why it's only when a person after 120 departs from the world that Chazal referred to it as Noyach Nafshe, that there's a calmness that descends upon the person, because outside of Gan Eden, stopped by the Lahat HaCheref HaMisapeches, that undying drive towards productivity, which we feel is what our sense of self is based on, a person can seemingly not find any rest for themselves. But like we've said at the beginning of all of these shirim, the job is to find calmness specifically from within that place where we feel that we're forced to let go of the dream of calmness. Specifically in that place of kufza alav, rugza diosef, is where we're going to find the secret of bikesh Yaakov leishev b'shalva. The world that becomes saturated with this drive towards productivity is the world that Kayin and Hevel are born into. Kayin and Hevel are born, they are the emergence of a doubled layer after Adam and Chava, which is a reflection of the departure of Adam and Chava from Gan Eden to outside of Gan Eden. Because Gan Eden is a unified place where everything is fundamentally connected to its source, and there's no need for the source to express itself, which is the opposite of Menucha. And outside of Gan Eden is now the need to travel, to walk, to wander, to extend, where the shoresh and the anaf, where the root and the expression, where the process and the goals seem separate from one another, and it's the birth of the need for effort. The same is taking place with regards to the neshamos of Adam and Chava and Kain and Hevel, because Adam and Chava are singular, and it was clear that they were the creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It was fundamentally clear. There was nothing before them. There was nothing to lose sight of the original source because the only source that they experienced was the original source. But now Kain and Hevel are now experiencing a doubled source. Now, when they look back to their original source, they're going to see Adam and Chava, and only Adam and Chava are going to have to look back and see Hakadosh Baruch Hu. And in order for Kain and Hevel to uncover Hakadosh Baruch Hu, they have to look twice because at first glance it appears that they're severed from the source. And so the emergence of Kain and Hevel is fundamentally connected with the emergence outside of Gan Eden. And even according to Rashi, who says that it's possible that Kain was born within Gan Eden itself, still the mindset of Kain being separate from Adam and Chava and a separate layer of distinction and separation is a product of being outside of Gan Eden. And Kayin already Kikanisi Ishas Hashem. Kikanisi Ishas Hashem, the name of Kayin. The name of Kayin, the emergence of Kayin into the world is this attempt to acquire something, to make an acquisition, to find something that I can rest myself upon that will give me a sense of connectivity, of reality, of object orientation, of possession, of power, of situatedness, and a sense of control. All of those things that come about with the elements of acquisition. Once we see labor as the fundamental way that the human being expresses themselves, and our job is to endow the labor with a sense of purposefulness, which is to give us a taste of the future in the present. But once we live in a world where labor is the byproduct of the Chet of Adam Arishon. So the next is, how do we relate to our possessions? What does it mean to possess in this world? What does it mean to possess the land, to possess objects, to possess ourselves, to possess of a connection? And this is going to be the engagement with Kain and Hevel, because it's at this very core of our engagement with what possession means and how we orient ourselves towards our possessive nature as human beings. It's going to be the distinction between whether I live a life of calmness, where I'm able to let go a little bit, where I'm able to extend the grasp of my hand into a tefach seichik, where I stop grabbing so much and I stop trying to gain so much control and allow myself to float a little bit in the secret of Vayar Menucha Kitov, or the opposite, God forbid, of a pressured orientation towards trying to grab hold of every possibility in this world in the hopes that it's going to edify me or in the hopes that it's going to finally give me the sense of enoughness. And that's a path towards Gehenna. That's a path towards suffering, because nothing is ever enough until a person chooses that it's enough. And it's this encounter with Kain and Hevel that is really going to bring us face to face with these two parts in ourselves. Because the sugya of Kain and Hevel is one of those sugyas that we always encounter, because every sugya has this kernel, but Kain and Hevel is a sugya koileles. Kain and Hevel is the beginning, the middle, and the end of human history, human experience, and day-to-day experience. Because just as Kain and Hevel are two fundamental realities within reality in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu reveals himself, so too they are two root souls that each and every person has access to. The Arizal and Sharhel Gilgulim, when the Arizal speaks about the meta psychology, so to speak, of what it means to be a human being who is forced to grapple with the fact that our subjective posture is not the end all be all of who we are, and that there are narratives prior to our narratives, and that there are uncovered memories that we have no access to because they're Gilgulim me Gilgulim Shonim, the changes and the transferences and the countertransferences that the human mind experiences throughout the unfolding process of Jewish history in the extension of Adam from the beginning, the middle, and to the end of Adam, David, Mashiach. So we have to give room for the decentering process of realizing that we are not necessarily the center actor in our story, that there are various parts to us, and there are parts of each and every soul, every neshama, every source neshama. Each neshama contains a rooted connection to these source souls, which represent powerful aspects of ourselves. And again, we're speaking about this in a metaphoric way. There's no Kabbalistic understanding to what I'm saying. I'm talking about the psychology of Gilgul, what it means to understand that there are other parts to us, that we are composed of many parts, that we contain multitudes. And the root source of those parts of the self, the root source of those extensions of the archetypes of how we function as human beings are ultimately going to be Kayin and Hevel. There are neshamos of Kayin and the neshamos of Hevel. And each of those neshamos identify themselves with a particular line of functioning, a particular line of tendency, of intuition, of interest, of orientation, etc. Now, to ensure that this doesn't become some metaphysical trap where one person becomes Kain and one person becomes Hevel, or one person becomes this type or one person becomes that type, which is a constricting mindset, which is rooted in in a physical, a magusham form of spirituality, which says each person is one thing and not some other thing, and this is the direct way to manifest yourself. Rather, what Yahadus does is it reveals the admixture of the spiritual principle to the degree that it becomes abstract enough and refined enough to not be an idol, to not be something thick that forces a person to remain stuck in these patterns, but rather only serves as an elevating way of thinking about reality. So instead of saying this person is Kayin or this person is Hevel, what the Arizal already expresses is that each and every person is both Kayin and Hevel, and Kayin has a Kayin and Hevel in him, and Hevel has a Kayin and Hevel in him, and we're going to see that there's no person who's truly Kayin, there's no person who's truly Hevel, there's no person who lives with one perspective, but rather each and every person has the potential towards both perspectives at the very same moment, which is the secret of Bechira. And it's generally and almost always going to be not one or the other, but how one relates to the other and how the oppositional dynamic between one and the other gives birth to a third area of Mibein Shnei Akruvim where the self really finds expression. So nobody is truly Kayin, nobody is truly Hevel anymore, but all of us have parts of Kayin and parts of Hevel within ourselves. So this narrative of the Kayin and Hevel story is one that bears a fundamental imprint on how human beings function and how we can relate to the promise or the impossibility of calmness in our lives. Adam Yadas Chava Ishta V'tar V'Teled as Kayin. That Adam and Chava engaged in procreation, and ultimately Kayin comes and V'toimer Kanisi Ish Es Hashem. I have found a possession. I have found a possession for Hashem, or Hashem has found the possession through me. That the birth of Kayin is the orientation towards the fact that now that I'm outside of Gan Eden, now that I live in a world split between process and goal, now that Menucha seems far from me, and the only opportunity for Menucha is specifically in the effort towards Menucha. So it's in this place that the first orientation becomes Kinyan. It becomes the desire it becomes the desire to gain ownership over something. It becomes the desire to plant my feet sturdily in the ground and say that this is where I stand. I am sturdied here. I am sturdy. This is my possession. This is my object. This is my thing. This is my idea. This is my offering to the world. This is my korban. This is the thing that I have to give the world. I become edified and stuck and sedimented and calcified, so to speak, in this particular posture, this kinyan, this acquisition, something that I can measure and hold on to. And this posture of saying, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is who I am, this is what I do. I can't change myself, I can't shift myself, I can't budge because I need to acquire and I need to possess. This is the orientation of a Kayin mindset. A Kayan mindset is a desire to acquire things because the world is too fluid otherwise. And then what we encounter is the birth of Hevel. Hevel is the opposite mindset. Hevel is you don't need acquisition in this world. No matter what a human being is going to do to try and wrestle calmness and comfort and a sense of stability in this world through object orientation, through being able to identify what my particular productivity is, a sense of this is who I am because this is what I do. Hevel is aware of that is a useless attempt because the human being floats. The human being floats. The human being is a creature who is never going to be able to find that calmness and the satisfaction of Gan Eden because we live in a world of after the Ched of Adam Arishon. And it's specifically in the inability towards possession that Hevel says where the human being is going to find Menucha. So Kayin says that Menucha, calmness, is going to come by wrestling some object orientation, some stability out of an unstable world by buying an object, by engaging in some possessional force, by owning something, by being able to point to something external and say, this is what I've done, this is who I am, this is why I'm valuable, et cetera, which is ultimately contingent and dependent upon the thing produced or the thing owned. As opposed to Hevel, who's saying that there's no calmness in this world. This world is a fleeting thing. There's a transient thing to this. And therefore, the only way for a person to find comfort is in the lack of attachment, in the breath of it all, in the floating away, in the nitzot el hashchina, in the hitzot el hashchina, of looking at only godliness. To a certain degree, one can say that Kayin's avoida, or the avoida of Kayin in each and every one of us, is to reveal, or is the attempt to reveal how there is an element of the potential towards limitation within the unlimited, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to reveal himself in some element of objectification, kavyachol, in this world, not object in the sense of limitation or measure, God forbid, but objectification as an idea, as something graspable, and Kayin wants to acquire that. And Hevel's avoida is to reveal that there's still that there's still a gvul in the infinite itself, so to speak. That Kayin is trying to reveal the infinite down here in the finite, and Hevel is trying to reveal the finite within the infinite, so to speak. And it's in this encounter between these two modalities of self that we're going to really try and grapple with the secret of Menucha and its opposite. That Hevel says, don't own anything. Kayin says, own everything. And ultimately, there's a battle. There's a battle that takes place. Vayihim miketz yamim vayavo Kayin mipriya adamam mincha Hashem. Kayin tries to offer himself up. Kayin tries to mark his territory. Kayin tries to find the comfort of being human in what I can identify as being complete in my life. That I am as valuable as the things that I've completed. I am as valuable as the things that I've produced. And Hevel comes along and says that the way that I am going to express myself in this world is the recognition of what I am limited in, what I can't produce, in the ethereality of all things. And it's specifically Vayihim Miketz Yamim. Miketz Yamim, something ended. Now, what ended, we don't know, but we're already operating outside of Gan Eden, where we're now stuck in the time orientation of things emerging from some previous end, that there's a rush now, that this is the birth of time that we expressed earlier as being the reason that we're outside of Menucha, because time is always pushing us, pushing us, pushing us to be productive, telling us that we're late for a very important date, and that there's not enough time, and the clock is always ticking, and that a person has to produce, or they're not going to be able to identify themselves as valuable. And so it's this sense of time awareness, or this anxiety that's born out of time awareness, that pushes this entire process of the Kayin and Hevel elements of ourselves into conflict. Vayi miketz yamim, it's like we see by the Akedah, Vayi acharei davar ma'ila, the sense of afterwardness. Something happened. Hayam mashahaya, something happened. Like in Rabbi Nachman's stories, there was something that took place that caused the entire country to run away. Something happened. The trauma happened. Vayimi Yamim, that thing happened, and therefore Vayovo Kayin. Kayin tries to affirm himself, and Hevel tries to affirm himself, and both of them are doing it in opposite ways. And Hashem receives what Hevel offers, and Hashem doesn't receive what Kayin offers. Hashem receives what Hevel offers because Hevel understands the secret of air. Hevel understands the fact that I can't own anything in this world. That if I'm going to try and define menucha in this world, it's not going to be through my productivity. It's not going to be through what I can identify myself externally as, but rather it's going to come from the Hevel Halev. Hevel Halev, the inner experience of the Lev, the inner experience of the Hishtoikakus, of the desire towards the infinite drive towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which can never be edified or completed in any object orientation. It can only be built and destroyed, built and destroyed, built and destroyed, to reveal that no matter how beautiful the building and the edifice of spiritual grasp is, nevertheless, it will always be destroyed in relationship to that which is ready to be built in the next moment, which is why in Maseches Brachos we learn about the tzaddikim who daven by the Churban, that the Churban is the recognition that Chad Charuv, it's the fact that whatever I build is ultimately imperfect in relationship to that which is above. And Hevel says, stop trying to possess, live in the air, suspend your attempt to create fundamental ways of being valuable, but uncover the value within yourself. And Kayin is not accepted because Kayin's drive towards possessionality, Kayin's drive towards productivity, Kayin's incessant drive to do, to produce, to reveal, to be Oived Ha'adama, to try and fix everything, to try and recreate an image of Gan Eden outside of Gan Eden, to try and recreate this sense of perfection that existed prior to in Gan Eden, but it wasn't perfection. It was what we discussed already so often, that in Gan Eden there was still work to do, obviously. But what Kayin wanted to do is to recreate that object orientation where we weren't floating, where there was some sense of vadaut, there was some sense of certainty. And Kayin is not accepted because that mindset in this world is going to only lead to disappointment. And Kayin is so overwhelmed. Kayin is so overwhelmed, or the Kayin in us is so overwhelmed by this whisper of Hevel that says ultimately Hevel havalim hakol Hevel amar Koheles, that in the end of the day, whatever you own, you're going to lose. Whatever you possess, you're going to come to a moment of dispossession, not because you're bad, not because you don't deserve, not because you're not good enough, but because that is the nature of man, that achein ruach be'enosh v'nishmat shaddai tavineim, that the ruach flows through man, that man is breath. That man is breath. We begin as breath, we live as breath, and we end as breath. We come from the dust, we live as dust, and we return to the dust. And ultimately, it's in that sobering humility that comes along with the light of Hevel that whispers to us that no matter what possession you take, no matter what possession you try and take over yourself, over your experiences, over your encounters, over your sviva, whatever control you try and really, really own in this world is ultimately going to be disowned through the breath that comes to reveal the flimsy nature of possession in this world. And Kayin can't handle that voice. The nature of Kayin, the anxiety of productivity, the anxiety of being driven out of myself to reveal the shirish of myself, because if I don't reveal or build the shirish of myself, then my shirish is mechusar, which is the shorish of being outside of menucha, the sense that I need to move outwards out of myself in order to create value, as opposed to moving out of myself from a place of saturation with value, from a place of surplus value, from a tesefes kishut, from a desire to be moisif kedusha, not to get out of tuma, but to be moisif tahara, to reveal more of you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not because I'm afraid, but because I'm in love. That place of comfort, Kayin was not there yet. Kayin saw Hevel, and he needed to kill him. He needed to get rid of that. Kayin felt that I can't live with this opposite mind in my world. I can't live with this notion that the possessive tendency in this world, the need to create, the need to own, the need to find comfort in possession, the need to find comfort in certainty, the need to find comfort in kinyan, that he can't handle the notion of Hevel, he can't handle the nature of the airiness of all things, and the desire to destroy it, to kill it, to get rid of it, to not allow it to be an option, because that anxious thought that enters into the quest for possession in this world as a source of comfort is always going to disrupt the possessional drive. Because if I'm aware of the Hevel Havalim Amar Koheles, whenever I'm trying to lay claim to something in this world as the source of my value, I'm always going to come back to the fact that I need to find value even prior to that thing that I thought made me valuable. I need to find the unconditional positive regard at the heart of all things. It's not about a kinyan, it's not about anything other than the Hevel Halev. But Kain was not ready to hear that, and therefore Kain kills Hevel. And as a result, Kain is punished. Now, HaKadosh Baruch Hu enters into a conversation, one of the most profound conversations. It's not one of the most. The entire Torah is the most profound thing in the world, but this pasuk continues to be the most profound thing. As Chazal tell us that if we were given eyes to see that every word in the Torah would be Machayim Mesim, every word in the Torah would be Madrichas, every word in the Torah would give us a direction as to how to move out of stuckness into a place of openness, out of darkness into a place of or. Every word, every pasuk needs to be relearned and relearned and relearned and relearned and forgotten and relearned each and every day, so that it can be Machayim Mesim once again. Machayim Mesim. It's Meshiv Nefesh. And so these psukim, this encounter that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has with Kayin, when he becomes despondent, about the lack of acceptance over his korban, when Kain comes to realize that his way of living is not going to be the way that comfort is going to be found. What happens with Kayin? What does Kayin encounter first and foremost? Kayin encounters kina, taiva, and kavod. Kayin, in a world of possessions, the orientation is going to be kina, taiva, and kavod, the three things that take a person out of their world. The three things that take a person out of their world are kina, taiva, and kavod: jealousy, temptation, drives, and the seeking of honor. Now, all three of those things are oriented towards Kayin, as the Arizal points out, and the Rebbe has a beautiful drasha in Samech Vav and Parshas Bereshis on this, that Kayin is Shivasayim Yakum Kayin. Yakum is Yud Kaf Mem, and the Arizal points out that Yud Kaf Mem is Yisro, Korach, and Mitzri. Moshe Rabbeinu killed the Mitzri with a name. Moshe Rabbeinu found Tzipora by Yisro, and Moshe Rabbeinu overcame the battle of Korach. That Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the Tikkun of Hevel, is the one who encounters all three of these elements of Kayin orientation and elevates them out of their stuckness into the redemptive position that the Kayin mindset offers. And so these three things, Kina, Taiva, and Kavod, are all parts of experience that come about in a Kayin mindset. The Kayin mindset which seeks possession, the Kayin mindset which seeks to own something, to be able to identify what I have produced in order to gain value, to feel that I need to produce, do, run, in order to find any semblance of comfort in this world, which always perpetually takes me away from the heart of myself. That is the birthplace of Kina, Taiva, and Kavod, and that is what happens with Kayin. Kayin is not a byproduct of that, but rather these things are a byproduct aspect of Kayin. Kayin is a lashon of kinna. Kinyan and kinna, jealousy and possession, are fundamentally connected because they're two sides of the same coin. Because the sense of possession, when it emerges from a place of deficiency, is that if he owns, I don't own, and if I own, they don't own, and it's always an orientation towards an ayin ra of a smallness of vision that looks at the other with eyes of temptation and desire to take what they have because I feel that I operate in a place of scarcity and I have to take what they have, which takes me out of menucha, and I can't be happy when the other person finds menucha either. And kinna and taiva and kavod take a person out of their world. What does it mean that kinna, taiva, and kavod take a person out of their world? What it means is that each and every person ultimately, and this is the secret of Hevel, and ultimately the secret of the fact that we have Kayin and Hevel within us, and each and every one of us has this, is that the only way that we're going to find comfort in this world, as we're going to see, is the ability to recognize that I am the sum total of existence, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world for me, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created everything around me for me, and that it is my singular purpose to identify what is broken in this world and what needs to be fixed in this world, is that each and every person has to be able to say, B'shvili nivra ha'olam. That is the nitzutz that rests at the heart of Kayin. Kayin was right about this nakuda, that B'shvili nivra ha'olam, that B'shvili nivra ha'olam, that the entire world is created for me. And what it means that the entire world is created for me means on every single level, as the Mikubalim, as the Rebbe points out more than anybody in history, is that each and every person has the sum total of the entirety of the cosmos. That we have the five worlds within us, and we have the five halakim of the neshama in us, and we have the five parts of the Torah in us, and we have the entirety of history within us, and we have all of the Shiva Roam within us. And each and every person has to feel the sufficiency of their own singular position of subjective orientation and understand at the very same moment that this fundamental truth is true for each and every other person around me. That I am center in my universe and periphery in the other's universe, and each and every person is center and periphery. And it's specifically in the delicate dance between center and periphery, between Iker and Tafel, between being the center of existence and relating to others with the understanding that they are the center of their existence, and I am just a pawn in their existence, I'm just a part in their existence, and delicately understanding that secret of V'ahavta l'oreacha kamocha, of loving the other like yourself, which is the prerequisite for entering into any chelik of avodas Hashem. It's specifically in that place that we're going to get rid of kin and taiva and kavod, because each person is their own world. And each person has enough, and each person has enough of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and each person has enough material, and each person has enough room to grow, and each person has enough struggle, and each person has enough trauma, and each person has enough. There's enough for each and every person. And therefore, if I understand that enoughness in each and every person, I don't have to run outside of myself. I don't have to be jealous. I don't have to search out beyond myself in order to find my value. I am inherently valued because I exist. I am the entirety of existence. Kol ha'olam lo nivra ela b'shvili. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mein God, my God. Adon olam asher malach, my HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'hu Eli, and he's my God. But if I lose sight of that perspective, then I'm already looking at other people's olamos. I'm looking at the worlds of other people, and if they have that much in their world and I don't have that much in the world, then I'm deficient. And I see what they have in their world and I want to have that in their world, and I don't understand the fundamental secret that their world is a completely separate world than mine. And for me to compare or contrast what their world is experiencing and what my world is experiencing, internally or externally, is to be mistaken in what it means to be a human being, because I am my world. And this is what the Ibn Ezra describes about the Isra of Loisachmo, not to have jealousy. How can you command on an emotion? Elama, if it's not mine, it's not shaykh to me. It's not shaykh to me. And if it's not shaykh to me, then it's a dream or a fantasy of me conceiving of that thing as being shaykh to me, or that concept as being shaykh to me. The birth of kinatayv and kavod are what happens when I stop looking at my own world, stop looking at the enoughness in my own world. I stop feeling that I am enough in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and that I can find menucha, and I start feeling that I am not enough because everybody else is so much more than me, and I try and live in their own worlds. I try and sing their nigun. And in that place, kina, taiva, and kavod, they are moitzin as ha'adam and ha'olam. Which world do they take us out of? They take us out of our own world. Because when I'm not looking at the saturation of my own existence and the ability to find menucha there, and I'm stuck in this mindset of productivity for the sake of value, rather than productivity emergent out of a surplus of value, at a saturation of self-value, which drives me to want to express myself more, which is a healthy perspective. So then I am no longer in my world, and I'm not in the other person's world. I live in Gehenna. And this is what Kayin is feeling, and Kayin's face falls down. His face fell. Kayin's face falls. Kayin loses sight of his face. Kayin loses sight of the fact that it's panim el panim, that he's talking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, panim el panim. And each person has access to the panim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a different way than everybody else in history. We're all contained within the way that Moshe Rabbeinu was masig, that you can't grasp the panim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and every ounce of Jewish experience within each and every soul is just the unending process of coming to terms with trying to grasp the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and recognize that we can't grasp the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's face is ultimately reflected in our own face, and that's the secret of the Mara, of looking at ourselves and being mazachich our panim, like Rabbi Nachman describes, so that others can see themselves in their panim, for our faces to become a reflection of Pni Kale, of the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where Yaakov Avinu encounters HaKadosh Baruch Hu in base Kale, and that place where the Ben Adam is nesapich to reflect the Shechina HaKadosha. That's our face. That's my panim in Torah. That's my panim in this world. And what Kayin encounters through jealousy, through no longer living in his own world, but being stuck in that world of productivity, of kinatayv and kavod, that take me out of my own world and put me in a position of reflecting on others' worlds, which is an unending drive towards productivity rooted in a sense of deficiency. What happens first is that v'yiflu panav, Kayin loses his face. He loses sense of his face. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, why are you upset? V'lama naflu panecha, why did your face fall? Why are you letting go of your own most individual way of finding a Kadosh Baruch Hu? Why are you bothered by what happened with Hevel? Why are you bothered with the fact that Hevel's thought is orienting you to reorient what it means to have possession in this world? You have Kayin and Hevel within yourself as well. Look at yourself. Hello, im tetiv she'es vim loy tetiv lepesach atas roy besalecha. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Kayin, he says, you have enough within yourself. Look at yourself, as the Meforshim point out. You don't need to produce like Hevel. You don't need to be informed deeply by Hevel's avodah. You have Hevel within yourself. You have enough within yourself. And learn that balancing act of allowing your desire to be Kayin with your own inner understanding of Hevel also being within you, which means to try and take possession, try and earn, but earn through a position of enoughness, earn through a position of strength. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Kayin, you have enough within you. This is the very definition of the answer to what Kayin's problem was, that you have the capacity. You have the capacity, and in Ishbitz and in Radzin, the entire claim that Kayin comes back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with is that I don't have Bechira. I didn't have Bechira in this situation. My kas was so intense. The kas, the anger, the frustration, which is emergent out of the kinatayv and kavod, which takes me out of my own world. Because whenever I see somebody else with something that I don't have, what it does is it causes within me a sense of deficiency. And if my entire sense of self is based on productivity and value, then any deficiency is going to be an assault on my very existence. Which is why when I see jealousy, it immediately raises within me the difficulty of anger. And in that place of anger, a person loses bechira, as we know. It's as if they're serving avodah zarah. So Kayin's entire principle was saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you put me into this place where I don't have control. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, no, you do have full control, Kayin, because you have Hevel within yourself as well, and you're able to cultivate a mindset of relating to existence by way of possession, but possessing with an openness, having a tefach soichik, holding but with hands opened, holding but with the fingers extended to allow the air to move in, and to make possessions and to own and to be productive, but from the place of Hevel Havalam Amar Koheles, that I'm not building because I think this is what's going to give me my inherent value. I know that my inherent value comes from that place of Hevel Havalim, from that Hevel that is prior to and above any form or expression itself. And that's going to be the secret unity of Kayin and Hevel together, where Kayin is informed by Hevel and Hevel is informed by Kayin. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to Kayin that you have enough within you. And if not, then you're going to get ready to fall. You're going to be at the precipice of falling at each and every moment. And Kayin fails. Kayin fails because the neshama of Kayin in us is the element that needs to fail. There's a necessity of failure. There's a necessity of struggle. There's a necessity of undergoing this uncomfortable process of the Kayin orientation to this world in order so that we can come back to a healthy orientation of Hevel and Kayin together. But to uncover the part of Kayin within us means to struggle, means to toil, means to be a neshama that feels the need to be productive, that feels the need to grab hold of some external value points, but nevertheless never quite find the value externally, and to come back to the recognition that I need to find the value internally, and to try and find the value internally, and to uncover new parts of internal value, but then to come back to a place of a metzas yeyush, of losing sense of my value, so that I search it out externally, and then to come back. That process of Kayin, that that wandering of Kayin is the mark of what it means to be a human being. And for now, the mindset of Hevel is killed. The mindset of Hevel is killed. And as the Gra points out, just as there are two Lavyasans, just as there are two elements of Giloy Elokus that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to reveal in the Suda of the Lavyasan with the arrival of Mashiach, so too there are going to be two elements of the self. That there's two Lavyasans. The Nekeva of the Lavyasan was killed, and the Zachar of Lavyasan was Saras. And what that means is that Hevel, which is the Nekeva of Lavyasan, which represents the Hasaga of Elokus and grasping reality from a perspective of a makif, of a circle, something that is equidistant from itself, no need for possession, but rather a world that can be imagined, no possessions, no distinctions. And that place of Hevel, that's killed away, that's hidden away from this world. Right now we live in a world of Kayin, we live in a world of the Lavyasan, the straight Lavyasan, which is the desire towards possession. And so the mindset of Hevel is removed from us, and we are forced to process the mindset of Kayin more often than not. And the curse of Kayin is no v'nad yeh ba'aretz. No v'nad yeh ba'aretz. You're going to wander in this land. What does it mean to wander in the land? We've read so often from the Heilige Kashnitzer Magid this incredible teaching that says that what does it mean that Kayin is forced to wander? Kayin was able to stop wherever he wanted to. Kayin had Bechira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Kayin free choice. Elama, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Kayin the gift of anxiety, and the anxiety was that HaKadosh Baruch Hu extended a partition in his mind, some neurological effect, possibly even, some expression of the actual birth of anxiety itself, this sense of needing to be elsewhere, that Kayin was incapable of finding a position of enoughness in his world. He was able to, if he had been Moiser Nefesh, if he had screamed out one true scream from that place, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have revealed it. But the reality is that Kayin hasn't screamed out that true scream yet. And therefore, Kayin is still operating in a place of no v'nadiyeh ba'aretz, where the mind is running back and forth, running and returning. And wherever it seems to find any element of comfort, it is then going to be knocked off itself to try and seek comfort elsewhere. This is the punishment of Kayin, to wander towards meaning without ever finding the meaning inherent with the place that I'm in, which takes me away from Menucha. It's a life of toil towards searching for the destination and losing sight of the fact that the destination is ever present wherever I might be, losing sight of the capacity of breath. And what Kayin says is, Rabbeinu Shalom, this is too much for you. You can't take this away from me. And also what Kayin is hinting to is that this is too much for me. I can't handle this. What does it mean for a human being to wander without destination? What does it mean to feel so far from the possibility of menucha because my life is so oriented towards the kinah, taiva, and kavod of others and takes me out of myself and makes me feel that lack of productivity is a lack of inherent value and makes me feel that my inherent value to HaKadosh Baruch Hu or to those that love me or to myself is dependent or contingent on anything external. And that anxiety of Kayin, that no v'nad yeh ba'aretz, that difficulty of Kayin is what Kayin says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is too much for me. This is too much for me. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Kayin an os. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Kayin a sign, and the Kashnitzer Magid says that what the sign is the sign of Shabbos. Shabbos is the ability to be calm. Shabbos is the ability for Kayin to be able to say that even though I don't feel like I have finished my work, even though I don't feel that I've accomplished what I need to accomplish in order to secure the inherent value of myself, nevertheless, I can choose to be mitzamse my mind and to live as if everything is okay. The secret of Shabbos is ki'ilu kol melachtecha asuya, as if all of your work is done. Kayin walks forward and v'boina ir, the Kli Yakar and the Meforshim and the Ramban points out, why is Kayin in a perpetual state of building? It doesn't say bana ir, he built a city, but rather boina ir, because the curse of Kayin is to always be building. Wherever I am is not enough. I need to be elsewhere. And when I'm elsewhere, I want to go back to where I was, and I'm building with no sense of completion whatsoever. This is the curse of Kayin, this endless drive towards productivity without inherent self-value. And Kayin says it's too much. I can't live my life this way with this anxiety. I can't wander internally my entire life without any sense of stability, without any sense of menucha. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him Shabbos because Shabbos is the ability to live as if I'm in a state of menucha. Shabbos is the secret of choosing to be okay. Shabbos is the secret of what Chazal say and Daf Samach Tesam and Aleph and Masechah Shabbos, that if I'm lost in a desert, if I find myself lost in the desert and I don't know when is Shabbos, I don't know what day it is, I don't know where I'm at, I've lost sight of which midah I'm oriented to. I live so much in a world of Kayin, of productivity, that I've found myself stuck in the midbar. I found myself stuck in desolation without any sense of connectivity to the Hevel Havalim, without any sense of connectivity to that Emunah Yeshera that allows me to connect to Menucha, of Vayar Menucha Ki Tov. What happens when I'm lost in the desert? And Chazal, there's a machlokas in Chazal, and one man the Amr says that you should first count 6 days and then make Shabbos, and there's a man the Amr in Chazal that you should make Shabbos and then count 6 days. The mindset that we need to cultivate here of Kayin is the mindset of I'm going to make Shabbos and then I'll count 6 days. That mindset, which the Ben Yoyada says, is revealed because Shabbos is be'emes always. A person can always tap into that menucha, and that's why we can pretend and say that it's Shabbos even if it's not actually Shabbos. And yes, there's a tiyufta on it, but that's the secret of Kayin, because Kayin is the person who has the tiyufta against him. Kayin is the person, the neshama that comes and enters into a world of tekus and a tikkun that's mechusar nun, and it's missing a nun because Kayin is the one who enters into the kushios. Hevel becomes the answer in the Gemara, and Kayin is the source of the question in the Gemara. And the Talmud itself, the Yam HaTalmud, is the emergence of Kayin and Hevel together, the need for an answer and the ability to live in the question itself. And Kayin comes to understand in the secret of the tiyufta of the Havamin in the Gemara, which is not even the maskana, that I can make Shabbos wherever I choose. I can machdu Shabbos. This is Shabbos. I'm choosing to say it's Shabbos. I know I'll never feel satisfied. I know I'll never feel that there's enough. But if I choose to feel that there's enough, if I choose to pretend that there's enough, if I choose to make it Shabbos right now, then it's mamish Shabbos right now, like the story of the Heilige Achim HaKadoshim of the Rebbe of Melech and the Rebbe of Zushya, that they revealed to themselves the secret of Shabbos that is inherent in every moment of existence, and the secret of Hayom Yom Rishon b'Shabbos, Hayom Yom Sheni b'Shabbos, that I can tap in. Kayin is the willingness to make a kinyan on Shabbos, to choose to be koina Shabbos right here, right now, in the secret of Yesh koina olamo b'sha'achas, that in this hour I choose to see it as Shabbos, and I'm no longer running, and I'm no longer stuck in the Novanadiya Ba'aretz. I'm no longer stuck in that perpetual anxiety towards productivity, rooted in a sense of a fear of not having anything inherently valuable within myself, which is taking me away from the possibility of tasting my world in my days, of living in Gan Eden. And this incredible, incredible sugya of Kayin. There's an amazing teaching that I saw yesterday from the Chedush Harim. It's such an incredible teaching that Rashi says that when Hakadosh Baruch Hu comes to Kayin, when Hakadosh Baruch Hu comes to Kayin and he says, Kayin, where's your brother? You killed your brother. Where is he? Not that you killed your brother, but where is he? HaKadosh Baruch Hu enters into this process of hide and seek with Kayin, that Kayin is goinev das elyon. Kayin pretends that he doesn't know. He steals. He tries to manipulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to trick HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then Kayin does tshuva, and Kayin understands the secret of Shabbos, the secret of tshuva, the secret of the ability to be calm, the secret of the ability to stop working even though I feel I need to work, to stop producing even though I feel I need to produce, and to force calmness into my life. And then at the end, when he goes away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he goes to Eretz Noid, which is the secret of wandering back and forth, but with the Ois Vav, which is the Ois of Chibor, as the Gra points out in his Bira on Safed Tzniusa, because Kain is the secret of continuing to work with a sense of connectivity and presence, which is the secret of Menucha, before he goes to Eretz Nod, which is Nun Dalid of Nov Nad Yeb Aretz, with the Vav, the Ois Chaim, that Chazal say is also the sign that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Kain. And so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, he sends Kayin off, and Kayin leaves, B'hachna'a, Rashi says, with a sense of anava, kegoinev das elyon, as if he was stealing HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mind, tricking HaKadosh Baruch Hu again. And so the Chedush Harim asks a question. He says, Kayin did tshuva already. Kayin's not stuck in the same goinev das elyon. He's not tricking HaKadosh Baruch Hu anymore. He's not trying to hide. So then why is it that over here, as he's leaving the face of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's again tricking HaKadosh Baruch Hu, trying to engage in this trickery or this falsehood with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? And the Chedush Harim says something incredibly, says that the secret of tshuva is being at the same place and the same time and refining the very thing that you encountered the struggle with. It's the secret of Tshuvas HaMishkal, that the very thing that you failed with is the very place that the solution is going to come from, which we've discussed so often. And just as the problem came from Kayin thinking that he could trick HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Gonev Das Elyon, so too the comfort and the redemption of Kayin comes from encountering that Gonev Das Elyon and redeeming it. And what is the Gonev Das Elyon? The Gonev Das Elyon, says the Chedush Harim, what was Kayin tricking HaKadosh Baruch Hu with? The ability to go and build with Yishav Hadas. Yishav Hadas, Kayin had to steal Yishav Hadas. Kayin had to steal, it was a gazela, a secret of Rosh Tevos, Gamzul Tova. Kayin had to be Goinev Das Elyon, the secret of making Shabbos right now. It's not Shabbos, it doesn't matter. I'm Goinev Das Elyon. I'm going to pretend it's Shabbos. It's a remarkable, remarkable teaching from the Chedush Harim, that the work of Kayin is to be Goinev Das Elyon in an oifen of Kedusha, to trick ourselves and to trick HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kavyachol into the calmness that we want to feel, to make it Shabbos right now. Why? Because I said it's Shabbos. And then we can come to this incredible teaching where we're going to end with from the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. The Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, and there's so much to say about Kayin and Hevel, and Be'ezras Hashem will continue. But what the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh says is as follows. Pasuk says that Kayin, if you are not ready to face the problem right now, then you're going to fall. And if not, you'll be able to get up and you'll be able to uncover more power. And so the two polarities there are either you're going to fly high or you're going to fall down. And if not, no v'nad yeh ba'aretz. So the Baal Shem Tov says these two positions of either being above Yeser Se'es, growing in spirituality, the sense of fundamental productivity, and the sense of having absolutely nothing to offer, both of them are unhealthy attachment positions in Avodas Hashem. To serve Hashem because I feel that I'm flying high in the heavens is a contingent relationship that depends on my productivity. To feel that I'm low when I'm unproductive and that I'm not connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also a mindset that is a failing opportunity. The secret is no v'nad yeh ba'aretz. No v'nad yeh ba'aretz means sometimes you're going to be high, sometimes you're going to be low, sometimes you're going to possess, sometimes you're not going to possess. This is the language of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh. It's such an incredible, incredible lashon. These teachings, I didn't know these teachings existed until yesterday. But listen to this teaching from the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh on Halo im tetiv she'es v'im loy tetiv lepetach chatas roibes. B'shem Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, the Baal Shem Tov says, Ha'adam sarich liyos tamid b'derech ha'memutza. A person needs to perpetually find themselves on the even path, which is the path of menucha, the shvil hazav that the Rambam describes. Loy b'hisnasus v'loy b'shiflus chas v'shalom. Not feeling that I'm flying high in the heavens with some sense of arrogance and self-importance, and not with a sense of the diminishment of my inherent self-value. V'zehu, and what this means is im teitiv she'es, that place of kishatovlo yeshlo isnasus, that when things are going well for you, you feel like you're ascendant. V'im loy teitiv yeshlo shiflus, and if I'm not doing okay, I feel bad. That's the place where I'm going to fall. That's the world of self-esteem where my sense of value is dependent on how others see me or see my productivity. And in that place, whether I'm high or low, both positions are self-esteem oriented, where my value is dependent upon how others view me. Aval kol ze lo tov. This is not good. Rak no v'nad yeh ba'aretz. But rather you should wander in the lands. Shetamid yeh loy b'isnasis v'loy b'shishlos la'atzvos. That you shouldn't be too high and you shouldn't be too low. Rak pam kach v'pam kach. Dahainu im yavu loy b'isnasis yachriyas atzmo l'tzad. Shein v'im yargish yavu la'atzvos yachriyas atzmo l'heploch. A remarkable teaching, the secret of everything that we've been saying. That this punishment of navi v'nad yeh ba'aretz, that you're not going to find menucha. You have to wander. The secret of that center point of das, that secret point of das, that I could choose to be in the middle. I can choose to make Shabbos right now. I don't feel that it's Shabbos right now, but I can choose to make it Shabbos right now. And this wandering, this up and down, this willingness to live without any need to have any identifiable possession or position where I feel that I am valuable in any deviation away, I'm not valuable, but rather to float like Hevel that enters into the world of Kayin, which gives us the secret of the uncovering of the Shoresh Ha'amiti of Kayin and Hevel, which is the secret of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. This is why the Chet of Kayin and Hevel, or the mistakes of Kayin and Hevel, were the Korbanos of Pishtan, which was brought by Kayin, and Semer and wool that was brought by Hevel, which is the secret of Shatness. Shatness is the desire to be so productive that we begin to destroy production, that we think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created singular worlds. Each world is expressing itself. We think that if I mix my world with that world, then I'm going to create more productivity, which kind of goes and cuts away from the original way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. That's kalayim. That means it's stuck in a jail. There can't be any expression. But it's specifically in the encounter with Kayin and Hevel and the unity between the two of them that shatness is going to be mutter, where Tsemer Upishtim are allowed in the Beis HaMikdash with tzitzis, because tzitzis is the reminder of the extension of self that's still connected to a source of self rather than just an extension of self that has severed itself from the connection to the center of self. And this is why the Medrash says that the argument between Kayin and Hevel was an argument about tzitzis, and that's going to be the relationship between Moshe and Korach later on. Korach as Kayin and Moshe as Hevel with regards to tzitzis kulot cheles. And again, like we said, it's a sugya that goes throughout the entirety of history. Ad v'yas goyel tzedek b'meher b'yameinu be'ezras Hashem.